In 2017, I was trapped in a job that almost killed me. I'm not even kidding you guys. I had to go through a pancreatic surgery where 50% of my pancreas was removed. That was a pretty scary thing because I had no idea how to get interviews for a job I loved. Honestly, I stayed as long as I did because I had no idea how to go about looking for a job. That's how insane it was for me. And so this is a picture of me after the surgery. I was in a lot of pain. I was bent over. It was awful. It was really awful. I suffered from a lot of back pain and I lost half of my pancreas. And this is why I'm doing this today, because I want to give you all tools that you can use in order for you to get out of a situation that you are not happy with. This is why I'm doing this presentation. But what makes me an authority on this topic, apart from the fact that I suffered a lot and I can relate to you all when I was a job seeker. I'm actually a certified resume writer. Not everyone knows that about me. Not only am I a master career coach, but I'm actually a certified resume writer and a contributor to a resume writing certification through the International Association of Career Coaches. So I helped, Kara Heilman, who's the president of the International Association. I provided a lot of valuable feedback in order for the resume writing certification program to empower career coaches to help job seekers. And I've also helped people land jobs. This is just a small representation. Amazon, Slalom, Loblaws, most recently Disney. So lots and lots of companies. So again, these basically frameworks that I'm going to share with you can be applied to different types of organizations. Because what I'm sharing with you is not from a single perspective of one hiring manager. I am sharing with you stuff that applies to multiple organizations and is transferable to different roles. Okay, so I want you to think about what category you identify with. So maybe you have imposter syndrome. Maybe you don't have Canadian or US experience. Maybe you are a career transitioner and you are trying to change, your career path. And I see that there are a few folks here who shared that they are in that situation. And maybe you don't have the right degrees or certifications and you're trying to break into a particular profession or maybe even up level. Maybe you're burnt out and unfulfilled and your friends are making a ton more money than you are making, or maybe you're not getting any interviews and that's the reason you are here. All right, so here are some mistakes that I was making and maybe some of you can identify with. So mistake number one is fighting the resume bots that don't exist. There's a lot of stuff around there in terms of, there are bots that scan your resume, unfortunately. And so today I'm going to bust that myth because I used to believe in that myth and I was spending and wasting my time dumbing down my resume, putting all the keywords, and I realized that I was doing all of that for nothing. So here's what the actual application tracking system looks like. You can think of it like a Trello board that has different swim lanes. And the purpose of the application tracking system is actually not to screen resumes. It's actually to track applications, to be able to put them into buckets, to organize them so that the recruiter knows at what stage each applicant is on. It's not about, it's not a tool used for screening. It's more about organizing applications. And the reason you tend to get that automated rejection is not because you don't meet particular keywords, but it's because there are questions on the application. So when you are applying online and filling out, all the information, apart from uploading your resume, there's usually a spot where it's going to ask you for additional information. Questions like, are you legally eligible to work for any employer in Canada? Or what are your salary expectations? And based on what you put in for those questions, you may end up getting disqualified. So the logic for disqualifying you is actually not based on what's in your resume from an automated perspective. It's actually based on the responses that you put in for these questions. Okay. And I want to give you even more proof because I'm all about empiricism and I'm all about empowering people with data when they make decisions. This is a conversation that I had with a recruiter at Slalom. So I get my source of truth not from HR people who are not involved in the hiring process, but I get my source of information from people who actually use the application tracking system and are involved in the screening process. And in my many conversations with them, I would ask, Do you use AI bots to screen out resumes? And the answer is no. Every resume gets viewed through a recruiter. But we have some pre-screening questions, which are the questions that I have showed you. Okay. We manually look through the resume and the application. So all of this stuff that you're seeing out there around how there are bots, that is not true. Unfortunately, a lot of these companies that sell you on that idea are just trying to make money. Think of them like big pharma bribing doctors to basically push these drugs on patients so that they can make money. That's what's going on. Unfortunately, that is the truth. Okay, so I actually want to share with you an interview that I did with an actual hiring manager who talks about what happens behind the scenes when she screens resumes.
I get my headcount approved, then I write the job description in there. That then gets an approval of routing, and then it gets published. In this portal, there's all of the resumes come through. And so then you kind of click and you review and you select whether you want to interview for screening or not. So how the screening happens, it's just like a person. So either the hiring manager, like myself, I can go through and review and select who I want to reject or keep, or we have something called services. It's basically like outsourcing. We have our IT function is in India, our HR services is down in Mexico. So we have a team of HR specialists down in Mexico who help with like the screening and recruiting. As a hiring manager, I can like reach out to my network and say like, who wants to like apply for this job? Like a lot of it's kind of the who I feel like that's most jobs. So after I get my job launched and then there's resumes, I kind of check daily and go through. So I think maybe from a candidate perspective, a missed opportunity is if you're not in the first 2 or 3 days, I probably won't even look at your application or resume because, like, for example, I hired a brand analyst position, and it was internal and external candidates. And I went in the system every day for probably 2 or 3 days, and I probably had 30 people that I wanted to screen to interview, which is just, for one position, that's crazy. And then, a week or two later, I was going back in and there was still double that, triple that in the number of resumes. So the maybe black box too from our side is, as a candidate, if you weren't in that top 30, because then when I select reject or accept, say you were like candidate number 100, you likely might not ever hear back from us.
Wow.
Just because. So for me, what I do is I've selected those 30 people, rejected half, except, moved to interview the other half. So you'll get communication from us in some way, but the rest probably just never hear from us. Then the like 30 candidates that we've selected, I think you get like a generic email from the system, or the HR person down in Mexico will send them, an email saying like the managers decided to move with someone else.
Interesting. So how do you select those top 30? Is it just by, well, a lot of it is timing, but I'm sure there's some kind of decision that would, a criteria that would make you want to choose. And just to kind of be a little bit clear, when it comes to, I'm sure that a lot of it is based on the content that's in the resume. So how is that content consumed? Because a lot of these application tracking systems, based on my understanding, they parse, information from the resume, they put in records in the database. A lot of people are concerned about their resume not being parsed correctly. Does that even factor in, or is it more like you actually read the Word documents in PDF files when you screen?
I've interviewed and hired for multiple positions. For us that I've used, there's no like ATS, I guess. It's just me reading through them. And so how we've done resume review is before, like, it's all competency based. Like, we're looking for analytical skills, leadership, kind of basic, just areas. And so when I'm going through a resume, I'm looking to see, if I'm hiring for a brand analyst, do you have any kind of marketing experience? Like, how much am I going to have to coach you in marketing? Do you have leadership? Just the different, like, you would, before we even launch the headcount, like, that's something you talk with your, like, my manager about, is here's what I'm, looking to hire. So then when I'm reading resumes, I think too, it depends. Like, there's been positions I've interviewed for where I'm not as diligent. I do the 7-second scam like other people do. But then in this last one, I read through every resume, and even some that had, Estee Lauder as like a job. I was like, ooh, but that sounds sexy, but let me read what you actually wrote. And it's like, well, okay.
So you screen the resumes by reading the actual document. There's no like searching in a database and any of that.
No, that's real high tech.
And I'm going to talk about mistake number 2. Mistake number 2 that I personally was making a lot is providing a lot of information. And I tend to see that with people who are more experienced, with people who have more than 7 years of experience, 15 years of experience, 20 years of experience. Too much information is not necessarily a good thing. All right. And I know where this comes from. It's because you may have this need to prove yourself and you feel like you have one shot. So you give all of this information to make sure you're covered. But what you're actually doing is you are overwhelming the recruiter. And you guys saw this, like, sometimes 7 seconds, they're going to quickly scan through. And so what information you have at the top matters, right? So being concise is extremely important. In fact, most of you are in tech, right? And a lot of you understand the design thinking principles. And one of them is called Hicks Law. And Hicks Law in design thinking talks about how the more information you throw at an interviewer, the longer it will take them to decide. So when you're giving too much information, that's making it hard for the recruiter to pick and choose what's relevant for them and to sort of sift through, you're actually causing them to, not make a decision. They're just going to go to the next candidate. Okay, so here's an example of irrelevant experience. This is a product manager resume on the left. This is the before and after, okay? And if you take a look at what's in there, you're going to notice a whole bunch of things that talk about project management, right? I mean, think about it. This person is applying for a product management role, but they sound like a project manager. And there's a heavy focus on design. There's a heavy focus on project management. And there's also stuff around product management. Versus when we streamlined it and we only picked the most important things that the recruiter cares about, it's a lot shorter. It's very easy to scan. Within the first sentence, you understand that this person is strategic. They drive the vision. They drive the roadmaps. They have delivered mobile and web-based apps. They've impacted more than 50,000 consumers. The first sentence packs a punch. It's like an elevator pitch. So this makes the person pause after the 7 seconds, right? And think, okay, I want to keep reading. I want to keep reading to see if this person is the right fit. But if you don't hit it in the nail within this first 7 seconds in the beginning of your resume, then the recruiter is not going to keep reading. So that's what they mean by 7 seconds. I'm going to take 7 seconds to decide if I'm going to continue reading the resume, if it is worth my time, or if I should move on to the next resume. Okay, here's the deal. If you speak like a product manager, recruiters will see you as a product manager. But when you have a whole bunch of stuff around project management, UX, operations, whatever profession you're in, you need to speak in the language of that profession, especially for people who are going through a career transition. If you are trying to also come across as a leader, let's say, a product leader versus a product manager, you need to sound like a product leader. You need to talk strategy. You need to talk about communicating with executives, not being in the weeds, right? So that's what I mean by, viewing the role in the lens of that role. Okay, mistake number 3. Mistake number 3 that I see a lot is these generic resumes that are pretty much a copy and paste of job postings. Now you're not standing out. Now you sound like everyone else. Now it looks like you didn't even bother really thinking and putting together the experiences that are relevant to the hiring manager. You're not being specific enough. And here's an example from a resume that I have recently come across. Drive product and business planning process across cross-functional teams, analyze data, web analytics, suggest product enhancements. I mean, those are just typical skills that are pretty much just copied and pasted from a job posting. They don't really tell me much. They don't give me enough specifics around what this person has accomplished, the impact that they've created. Recruiters want proof of success. Hiring managers want proof of success. So the winning anatomy of a perfect resume is actually, you want to have a paragraph that recruiters can quickly scan for your roles and responsibilities. You want to emphasize your proof of success, AKA the achievements, using bullets. Bullets are used for emphasis. You want to have quantifiable numbers to show, basically the impact that you've made. And you also want to list examples of products that you've worked on. Now, this gives the recruiter and the hiring manager the full picture. When they scan it for the first 7 seconds, and maybe their eyes are going to be drawn to the bullets, they're going to want to read more. All right. So now that we've gone through the different mistakes, I want you to think about, what is the mistake that you're most guilty of, right? What is the mistake that you're most guilty of? The 3 steps to build a perfect product resume. These are the 3 steps. Step number 1, understand your ideal job. Step number 2, map your experience to the ideal job. You gotta, create a brand that aligns to the role that you're going for. Not what you're doing right now, the role that you're going for. And then fit your experience in a resume template. So I'm gonna go through these 3 steps. So before you write about what you did, right? Before you write about what you did, which is actually this part, this paragraph describing all your roles and responsibilities, you need to gain an understanding of what hiring managers look for. So I did the work for the folks who are product managers here today. But if you're not a product manager, you can follow the same process. You can look at job postings and you can look for the things that repeat over and over and over again. Those are the things that are important. Those are the things that you need to talk about that you've done. So I actually looked at many, product management job postings, obviously helping more than 40 people land product management roles. And the pattern that I found is that product management roles, okay, boil down to these four themes: leadership, strategy and design, analytical, technical depth. And if you remember the video earlier of that hiring manager, she actually said that she looks for leadership skills and analytical skills, right? So she didn't talk about the strategy and design and technical depth. Those are additional things that you need to have as well. But what I'm saying here is actually what hiring managers look for. And if you take a job posting and categorize it using these buckets, it's going to be very easy for you to remember what to include and how to describe your experiences. This actually comes from the Google Guide to Interviews. So that is my source of truth in terms, and that is how I got the idea in terms of helping people figure out what to include in their resume. So I want you to think about leadership for a second. Leadership is how you use your communication and decision-making skills to mobilize people towards success. This is the people interaction aspect of what you've done. Now, I'm going to look at the three levels within product management. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of levels, but I'm going to focus on three levels: associate product manager, and product leader. Okay? So at the associate product manager, what they look for is your ability to work with cross-functional teams, different departments: marketing, engineering, product design. If you are at the intermediate level, from a leadership perspective, they are looking for um, someone who's a key leader of a product pod, driving alignment and clarity. They're going to look for someone who's able to partner with cross-functional business leaders across maybe regions. They will look for someone who's able to simplify and communicate complex or technical concepts, partner with diverse individuals at all levels of the organization, align diverse group of stakeholders toward a common role. These are all people interaction things that you need to keep in mind as you describe your experiences. Okay, from a product leader perspective, your ownership expands, right? Now we're going from team level and maybe multiple teams to actually looking at things from an organizational level. So if you are going for director role and above, maybe you're a group product manager, maybe you're a principal product manager, maybe you are a director of product, maybe you're even a VP of product. Now you need to ensure that when you describe your experiences, you're not describing them at the team level, you're describing them at the organizational level. You're building the portfolio of products across the organization. There's a lot of people management things, whether it's onboarding product managers, directing multiple cross-functional teams, guiding and mentoring product managers, supporting the career development, driving change and clarifying the roles of the teams, obtaining buy-in from leaders in alignment with the business goal and company's North Star. This isn't just the product vision. This is the overall business goals and being able to translate them across multiple teams. If you're not a product manager, think of this in a similar way. Make sure when you're looking at job postings, read carefully, because I literally copied and pasted these things from a job posting and I just categorized them, right? So think of the differences between the different levels if you're going for director, intermediate, or entry level. Okay, now I want to talk about strategy and design. So what is strategy and design? Strategy helps us decide what problems to solve, right? To make the product vision a reality. Design is coming up with creative solutions to solve these problems. Example for associate product manager: you're not going to be overly strategic because this is more of an entry-level role, but you're going to be supporting a lot of the strategy. So just to make sure that I didn't lose anyone and everyone is here, let me know. If just give me a thumbs up just so that I know that you're still with me and you are still here. Just want to double check. Okay, cool. I see 31 people still in the live, so I think we're still good. Strategy and design, right? For an associate manager is supporting the strategy, supporting the development of the roadmap, supporting the team in developing the features and functions, understanding the market trends, and you're doing a lot of the data gathering and maybe working on documentation and slides to support the leadership team to present ideas. Okay, intermediate product manager. Now we're getting more into shaping the strategy, but you're doing it more at the product level rather than the organizational level. And you're probably responsible for one product or a component of a product. So driving products from concept to launch, helping align teams' overall product strategy and business goals, driving market and usability research, driving the vision, creating the roadmaps, managing the backlog. Again, you need to really tune in into those things and think of them as a checklist. And when you are thinking about what you've done and your experiences, you need to demonstrate that you meet that checklist. Because remember what the hiring manager was saying, that there is a third party that actually screens your resume. So you need to be very clear so that someone who doesn't have a lot of knowledge in product management, based on the criteria they're given, right, that they can understand and relate it to what you've done. Okay, so same thing with product leader. We're creating a strategy at the organization level. We're working directly with CEOs, boards of directors, senior leaders. We're owning several key products and solutions and not just one product. Analytical. Analytical is basically making decisions based on data. Whatever role you're in, even if it's not product management, there is an analytical component. If you're UX, you're using basically usability tests. You're using data from UX research in order to make decisions. If you're a project manager, same thing. If you're in operations, same thing. There is always an analytical portion in a role. So identify what those are and make sure you meet them. Same thing. Intermediate product manager, we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Maybe at the associate level, you're probably responsible for gathering the information, and at the intermediate level, you are coming up with the insights and seeing the patterns. And if you are a product leader, you are guiding teams to do this for you, and you are actually defining the metrics and the KPIs. Okay, so now that we have gone through all of the teams and you have a good understanding, a very deep understanding from a product management perspective, let's talk about the process of mapping your experience to your ideal job. So remember the anatomy or the structure of the perfect resume for a particular position that you've held. Let's talk about the roles and responsibilities portion. How did this come together, this paragraph? You did all the heavy work. You did all the research in terms of what is needed, what you need to demonstrate from the themes, right? Now we want to actually think from an experience perspective, what exactly did you do that meets all of the criteria from these ones, right? So here's a little technique that I give people to basically map their experience into themes. You can use physical flashcards. You can use a Miro board. You can, use a flashcard image and sort of categorize your information. There are also flashcard digital tools that you can use if you're a visual person, and you can mind map your experiences. I usually recommend for people to think about different projects that they've done, different products that they've worked on. In this example, I'm saying, I worked on a payments portfolio of products, right? This is like more at the leadership level. What did I do from a strategy and design perspective? What did I do from a leadership perspective? What did I do from a technology perspective? What did I do from an analytical perspective? Lean on the criteria that you gathered and ask yourself, did I do any of these things? And then talk about it from the perspective of that project. Example here, let's say you worked on a payments portfolio of products, and from a strategy and design perspective, maybe you defined and executed the roadmap for more than 30 products up to 1 million, and you translated the company mission into a clear product vision. Maybe from a leadership perspective, you actually collaborated with cross-functional partners and C-level executives across, all of these departments. Maybe you designed a gaming API using Unity. Maybe you, and this is totally not related to payments, but I'm just trying to illustrate an example, fill in the blanks with whatever technology you used for the purposes of that product. Maybe you came up with success metrics to measure the product performance across the pods. Do you see how this makes it so much easier for you to figure out what you need to put in your resume? The mistake that people make is they go right ahead into writing the resume. They think, ooh, if I have a magical template, I'm good. They don't do all the prep work. This is like when you cook, you can't just go and cook. You got to lay out your ingredients. You got to look up a recipe. You got to figure out, how to put the, ingredients together. So that is exactly what you're doing. When you do all this preparation work, it becomes so much easier for you to write your resume. So I literally took all of these cards, all of this content in these cards and I pulled it together into a paragraph. That's what I did. That's how easy this is. Now, we talked about the paragraph of what you did, right? Now we want to talk about basically the achievements. That's the proof of success. So how do you come up with the proof of success? And that is the thing that people struggle with the most. I want you to think of the proof of success or your achievements as mini transformations. Ask yourself, have you basically changed anything? Have you led a change, or did you contribute to a change that created a positive impact or that created a transformation for the company? And how did that improve the company's bottom line? So maybe a change you did is when you were working on a particular product, you were able to eliminate user journey redundancies. And that, how that affected the bottom line was it reduced the cost by 1 million. Do you see this? Change you made, because what do we do on a day-to-day basis on our jobs? We always drive change. Whatever aspect we do, especially in product management, we bring in an improvement, we create change, and the change, think of the change, ask yourself, how did that improve the bottom line? And that is how you can come up with your achievements. So you can see here, reduce cost by 1 million by eliminating user journey redundancies. And I generally advise people to start with a verb, such as reduce, improve, grew revenue, reduce cost, by how much, so that the recruiter can quickly see this at the beginning of your bullet, and then explain how you did that. Okay, so now that we talked about the proof of success, we also talked about the roles and responsibilities. That's pretty much the anatomy for every single role, okay? That is the anatomy for every single role. And yes, you can you can get the replay. All right, so that is the anatomy for every single role. The last part is fitting your experience in a resume template. This pretty much repeats for every position. Now, how do you plop this into the resume template? Let me go through the perfect architecture of a resume. So you want to have a layout that is easy for a recruiter to navigate so that they can find the information within seconds. From a user experience perspective, think of how you navigate a website, right? So you want to start from the top. That's how people scan, to the bottom. You don't want the eyes to go all over the place. This is why when I see these fancy resume templates that have multiple columns and the recruiter and the hiring manager literally have to zigzag their way through your resume, yeah, that's not very helpful. So think top to bottom. They're going to scan your resume top to bottom from a work experience perspective. The stuff that you can have in the margins can be your why me section, can be your contact information, your skills on the second page, your education. And please don't put your education at the top of your resume if you're not entry level, because hiring managers value your experience versus your education. In fact, I've had clients who did not have a degree and it didn't matter. Okay, so unless you are entry level or at the VP level, if you are somewhere in between, I recommend 2 pages, because 2 pages, see, concise doesn't have to mean that you need to cut down to 1 page. Sure, you don't want to ramble, but you want to give enough meat and enough clarity in terms of what are the types of things you did in your job, right? And that requires 2 pages. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard to demonstrate that. And you need to have your basically name and title at the top. Definitely have the title that matches the job posting. Don't put your current title in your company. The title at the top is meant to say that, hey, I'm applying for this role. I'm a candidate for this role. I want to be considered for this role. Yeah, and then you want to have your contact information. Obviously, you want to have the tools and that basically that are specific to the role. You want to have your education at the bottom. And this is the before and after of a resume that I put together. Notice how a lot cleaner it is, right? And it's very easy to navigate. Okay, so I know we're at 15 minutes, which is cool because now I can give you some bonus stuff. And the bonus stuff is around how to quantify your achievements. So I talked about bottom line, right? And what I mean by the bottom line and the impact that you've created for the organization, it really comes down to cost, time, and quality. So whenever you're struggling with, I don't know how to quantify this, I don't know how to talk about the impact, think about whatever project that you worked on. I'm not saying that you are the only person or your contribution was the only contribution that resulted in the impact, right? You obviously worked with a team. And you can talk about your specific contribution to that overall impact. But it's a good idea to think about it from a business impact perspective, especially if you're a product manager, because at the end of the day, companies care about profitability. That's why they hire people. So ask yourself, the work I did it reduce the cost for the company? How did it reduce the cost? What are the tasks that are relevant to my role that contributed to the cost reduction? Did what I do increase the quality? Maybe the way you prioritize the roadmap. Maybe the fact that you involved the customer in feedback ended up improving the quality. Think about the before and after. By how much did you improve the quality? Maybe you decrease the number of defects. That's a good measure of improving the quality. So those are just examples of how you can articulate your achievements. And hey, if my client Rachel, who came from the world of academia where things are not measured, we ended up quantifying her experience, then I'm sorry, guys, you have no excuse. Okay, so those are just examples. Ask yourself this question after you've written. How did that impact the bottom line of the company? Don't say things like, the client had a clunky system, right? Or sorry, ask yourself, this is a revenue growth example, for example, right? Maybe the client had a clunky system and now we successfully migrated the data. Ask yourself, how much time did I save the company by going through this data migration? If I introduce this automation, by how much time, things sped up? So maybe there was an 83%, decrease in time. Maybe you increase the number of clients because of the product improvements. By how many? Maybe you grew a revenue. By how much, right? Don't just say things like, I led a large project. Tell us how much the project was valued at. So make sure that everything you put in is concrete and that you have actual numbers, because then it becomes believable. It's kind of like if I said to you, I have a high success rate versus saying that everyone who completes my program, there's an 85% success rate, right? So that creates more credibility. Numbers create more credibility. These are more examples. Built a product impacting a ton of consumers versus built a product impacting 3,000 B2C consumers. Okay, so that is basically it. So after I end this live, if you DM me cheat sheet and provide me your email, since you stuck till the end, that's your reward. I will send you the cheat sheet. But the last question that I have for you, I know that I dumped a lot of information at you and you're wondering, oh my God, how can I implement all this information? Well, don't be hard on yourself because this is something that takes a couple of weeks for me to basically teach clients to do. And I end up working with them closely to guide them, through writing the resume process, asking them the right questions to elicit that information. So don't feel bad for not being able to understand everything and feel like you have to basically figure this out on your own. And I also want to ask you that if you are in this situation where you are miserable, right, and you don't love your job, I want to ask you, what is the cost of doing nothing about it? Because I know that it costs me a lot. It cost me half of my pancreas not trying to change my situation. So I want to empower you all to take steps towards changing your situation. And so I want to tell you about my program and how that can help you do that. Because it's not enough to just know how to write your resume. We talked about how it's important to basically identify your ideal job. That's step number one. And if you don't know what job is the right fit for you and you're getting, all kinds of imposter syndrome because you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if this is the right level. I don't know if this is the right thing for me. It's very important to get that right before wasting time applying to a ton of jobs. And how I help people do that is I get them to do a career archetype quiz that literally identifies what roles they qualify for. And obviously, we talk about it to make sure that is in alignment with their motivators. And the second thing we do is we go through the rebranding. So I gave you a little bit of a flavor of some of the rebranding, process that I help people and how my technique, as you may have seen, is more innovative than what's out there. It's actually about being authentic and empowering you to talk about your experiences in a truthful way rather than trying to basically hack a system and beat a bot, right? That's what's important. It ends up giving you confidence. And all of this stuff, I actually use storytelling techniques basically to elicit some of these experiences for people, which ends up being very useful for interviews, which takes me to the last part, and that is selling your purpose. Again, it's not important to just brand yourself and get an interview. You got to also convert it into an interview. And so I have a basically proprietary story selling technique that can help you do that. In fact, I got invited by the Scrum Alliance in order to share that. I encourage you to actually watch my Scrum Alliance presentation. And if you guys want, put in the chat and let me know if you want me to do a live around interviews. I can definitely do that as well. Anyways, I hope you found this helpful. If you are interested in my program, I definitely encourage you to reach out to me. Brand new shiny program that starts January 2nd. It's a 6-week program that goes through all those pillars, gives you the complete system in order for you to become successful. So if you are interested, definitely DM me right after the live, and I can tell you more about it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you all learned something valuable. I hope you feel more empowered. I hope you feel like you have the right information. And yes, send me a DM. Let me know if you want the cheat sheet and if you want to learn more about my program and